Rick Waldenberg runs a $25 to $50 million e-commerce toy business called Learning Resources. Rick imports the toys from China. His business booms until things begin to change. It all started when the freight forwarding company quoted him $30,000 to ship a single container, 10 times what it cost him the year before. The products arrive at the port of Los Angeles, but the train carrying his products from the port to Chicago takes 45 days. Rick observed, Pony Express could have gotten it here faster. The shipping containers finally arrive, but Rick cannot access them. They are stuck at the bottom of a pile of containers for 9 weeks. The rail line charges him for the storage. Rick Waldenberg pays $1 million in storage fees in September alone, and 10 times the normal shipping cost. This all because of the supply chain crisis. Is now a good time to sell on Amazon? December 12, 2019, a cluster of patients in Wuhan, China experience shortness of breath and fever. March 2020.
My fellow Americans, tonight I want to speak with you about our nation's unprecedented response to the coronavirus outbreak.
43 governors across the United States of America order residents to stay at home. Economists predict that demand for goods will sink, and yet the exact opposite happens. People buy things like the end times are here. And not just toilet paper and hand sanitizer, but everything. With limited access to pleasantries like travel, restaurants, and the theater, people start spending their pleasure funds on online products instead of in-person services.
We see third quarter net sales coming in at $96.1 billion.
38% growth compared to the previous year of only 20%. The rise in online spending fuels demand for more manufacturing. More manufacturing leads to fleets of cargo barges stacked with containers shipping from China. More cargo ships from China leads to clogged shipping ports along the United States West Coast. More than 80 ships loiter out at sea, waiting their turn for orders to dock. And then COVID hits Southern California, and thousands of longshore workers call in sick. With a reduction in labor force and an explosion in numbers of shipping containers, the problem exacerbates. Kerr Gibbs from the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai uses a curious phrase.
Now that we're seeing this burst in global demand, that ratio has shifted. We're probably about 5 to 1 now.
For every 5 shipping containers filled with products leaving the ports in China, only 1 is returning. So where are the other 4? Piling up in the ports of Southern California. The Port of Los Angeles and its neighboring port of Long Beach are not just 2 of the 5 major ports dotting the coastline of the Pacific. Together, these 2 ports account for 40% of all U.S. imports and nearly 30% of America's exports. In the words of Gene Soroka, executive director of the Port of Los Angeles, these ports are a critical gateway to the American economy. Clog up these ports, and the ripple effects hit everyone, from the college student waiting for her Amazon-purchased USB driver to land on her front doorstep, to the businessman trying to book a car rental to get home to his family after a draining 3-week business trip. So let's say you're an Amazon seller, and you are selling umbrella hats. Your products sit patiently inside one of those containers on one of those ships. After weeks of waiting its turn, your ship is finally given a berthing assignment, meaning it can float into its assigned slot on the dock. The ship slides in, and a sky-high crane reaches down, latches onto the container with your umbrella hats, and hoists it into the air, moving it to a yard where it will wait to be loaded onto an 18-wheeler truck. So your product waits, and it waits, and it waits. The truck finally arrives. Your container is loaded onto the semi, and the truck drives your container to the Inland Empire, where it is offloaded at a distribution center where your umbrella hats are to be processed. Once processed, the hats are loaded into a long-haul truck, another 18-wheeler, that carries your goods across the country to an Amazon fulfillment center where robots and humans will stock your umbrella hats, load them into the fulfillment center, ready to be shipped to the Amazon customer. Why did your umbrella hats have to wait so long for a truck driver? A relevant question since the Department of Transportation states that truckers move 70% of all U.S. freight by value. The problem is not a lack of truck drivers like mainstream media often claims, but a lack of truck driver retention. There are presently 3.5 million truck drivers in the United States, but 10 million who have a commercial driver's license. In other words, they can drive a truck, but no longer want to. While the port waits for truckers, more containers keep coming in. Something has to be done with your container of umbrella hats. So they rent a warehouse and stuff your products inside until an 18-wheeler truck can pick them up. This explains the bill you receive for warehousing costs months later. US ports end up with thousands of empty containers, and no one will pay to have these shipped empty back to China until there are goods to fill them with to justify the cost. To give perspective, in the year of 2008, 184,000 cargo vessels were in China. In 2020, that dropped to 127,000 vessels. Yet China's export value of goods increased by 125 billion during that same time period. In other words, during the same time period that China's export demand grew by $125 billion, the number of cargo vessels in China reduced by 57,000. This leads to a huge demand for shipping containers. What happens when supply goes down while demand goes up? Prices skyrocket. Shipping companies start buying more containers so they can export goods from China to meet the demand. And how do they pay for these inflated cost shipping containers? Well, they raise their shipping prices. With the increase of online buying, factories and equipment run more hours each day than ever before. This increase in energy consumption leads to an electricity shortage in China. This is why last fall, in the city of Shenyang, in the dead of night, hundreds of cars came to a halt on a darkened highway when the streetlights went out for hours. Within months, energy restriction laws sweep the landscape of China, and suddenly Chinese authorities are forcing factories to work only 3 days a week. Fewer days for factories to work means production times get pushed out as more and more factory orders continue to pile up. Forcing factories to work reduced hours creates another unexpected twist of events. The cost of manufacturing goes up. Now, to counteract these forced restricted hours of production, which means a massive reduction in revenue, just to sustain their operating expenses, factories begin raising their prices. Last March, COVID outbursts hit the city of Shenzhen. Implementing their zero-tolerance policy, China put the 17.5 million residents on lockdown, even closing Apple's factory, Foxconn. Although China loosened their lockdown restrictions just weeks later, the ripple effect this caused in the global supply chain had already begun. For example, let's say you order your umbrella hats from a Chinese manufacturer. Rarely does only one factory produce a single product. Your umbrella hat is likely made up of at least 3 different raw materials that no single factory can produce. So factory Bobby McGee Industries might be your point of contact, and let's say they design the hat, but they don't solder the parts, they don't weave the fabric, they don't paint the handle. They outsource these things to other factories who specialize in these skills. So even if your point of contact factory is not in a province impacted by China's energy reduction laws, that factory is likely working with other factories who are. Your product can only be produced as fast as the slowest factory. So, is now a good time to sell on Amazon FBA? Yes. Just like catching the flu, supply chain crises do not last forever. And just like your shadow, problems don't go away by running from them. I will give you 5 reasons why I'm convinced that now is a good time to sell on Amazon FBA. Number 1, many will not, which puts you ahead of the competition. When they finally join, you are already ahead of them. Number 2, obstacles are not a good reason to give up. Delays do not mean failure. Increases in price does not mean no profits. There is always a way. It just means you might have to fight a little harder and wait a little longer. No one achieved anything in life worth telling about that was easy. Number 3, The supply chain crisis is slowly getting better. To use one of many examples, on Friday, May 6, only 35 ships were waiting to unload their cargo at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. Just 3 months before that, that number was almost double. Number 4, China is getting heavy competition as a sourcing country. This is the beauty of the free market on an international scale. In the last few months, Just When Dime has had suppliers and sourcing agents from non-Chinese countries reach out and ask if we'd like to source from them instead. Now, the supply chain crisis is worldwide, so getting away from China does not completely remove the challenge, but it absolutely can ease it. Number 5, sourcing internationally is not your only option. What about sourcing domestically? Yes, it's going to be much harder to find competitive prices, but if you turn your Amazon business into something like online arbitrage, buying discounted products from retail stores and then selling these for 2 to 2.5 times more on Amazon, you can make a profit on the difference. There is always a way. Private label's not going away. Brand building is not going away. Has the world changed? It has. But notice the products continue to sell on Amazon. In fact, you probably personally buy on Amazon. And every time you do that, there is a strong chance you are investing in the store of a third-party seller. You cannot control what happens around you, but you can control you. So be the difference by taking action, because those are the businesses that succeed. This is Seth, Kniep'n It Real. If you liked this video, if it was helpful to you, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content. And if you are interested in building your own Amazon FBA business and learning how to navigate the waters of the world today with where it's at in trade, go here to meet with one of our team members, JOD.com/freedom. Because that's the whole point. Build a business to give you freedom to do the things you love with the people you love. You have an awesome day.